Welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut, where we celebrate those who defy fear, embrace growth, and live without regret. In a world that celebrates perfection, we rarely hear about the challenges, fears, and crossroads that successful leaders grapple with across work and life. Uncomfortable Growth Uncut shines a light on their personal story and the critical human skills we all need today to turn trials into triumph. So welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. Today I am with the lovely Leisa Bacon, who was the Director of Audiences most recently at the ABC. She was there for 10 years, so has a wealth of experience. She's also a board member of the AANA and also on the board with Legs on the Wall, which is a theatre group. So she's a high advocate. And most importantly, she's one of my oldest corporate friends because we were both assistant brand managers at Procter & Gamble many years ago. So welcome, Leisa, to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut.
Hi, Ro. Thank you very much for having me. I'm pretty excited to have a chat to you about this.
Okay, so you know the question I'm going to ask, which is, what's your uncomfortable growth story?
Yeah, so I probably should start by saying I actually quite like being a bit uncomfortable because I've always believed nothing good in life comes from playing it too safe. So I love to travel off the beaten track. I like to try new things. I've always tried new sort of career industries. But every now and then I think something comes along and you think it's going to just be a bit uncomfortable and then it really takes you to the edge. So I thought I'd tell you today about that. One of those or two of those examples in my life. And I did want to start with something that was a bit personal that I don't actually talk about a lot because it's rare that you get an opportunity to talk about yourself. So it actually happened about over 20 years ago now. I was on one of my traveling adventures from work and I'd taken about 5 months off to travel through Africa. And I wanted to get some hiking in before I climbed Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And you've got to remember, over 20 years ago, there's no Google, there's no mobile phones. If we wanted to find out what was going on, we had a Lonely Planet guidebook, and often it was, a couple of years out of date to plan. So you didn't necessarily have very reliable, up-to-date information. And to be honest, when you're traveling in Africa, you actually also didn't have very detailed information, but hey, it's all part of the adventure. So I come across a hike called the Fish River Canyon, and the Fish River Canyon is the largest canyon in Africa. It sits on the border of Namibia and South Africa. And it's about 160 kilometers, but it has a walking trail through the middle that you go down, walk along for 4 to 5 days, come out the other end. And it was estimated to be about 90 kilometers. It was like perfect distance. Hadn't been to Namibia.
So your perfect distance and my perfect distance look a little differently. So I'm just saying that.
Well, it's about the same length as climbing Kili. So I thought, okay, I can do this. This will be a good experience. I had a couple of friends in South Africa, so I was like, okay, let's do this. We hopped on a bus in Cape Town. It took us about 12 hours. And the bus just literally dropped us on the side of the highway. And then we sort of had to hike into the Fish River Canyon. And then you actually hike down. So it's a one-way hike in there. It is a canyon. So you literally hike down and then you hike along until you can see a point at which you can hop out. So we knew it was sort of this one-way distance, and that at the end, at the out point, there would be a farm or a place that we could actually call to get someone to bring us transport. Because you're in Namibia, in the desert, you're literally in the middle of nowhere. I think it's about 700 kilometers from Windhoek, the capital. So this is like a pretty big thing.
This is the equivalent of the Australian outback, but in Africa.
It is. But I'm the child of Queensland, and I'm like, I like being warm. I've done quite a bit of hiking in Queensland. I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
So we've got our backpacks, we've got everything that we needed. We've got quite a lot of water on us, but we know from the guidebook that there are wells along the way at each of the campsites, and you just camp along the walk. So, and it should be pretty flat because it's a canyon. We hike down. We're hiking along. We actually run into a few other people, and I think it's about September, late September, which is the very just after the end of what they said was the hiking season. So that's sort of May to early September. And we're like, okay, but we're pretty close. We should be okay.
Should be fine.
That's very important because
Should be
yeah,
fine.
and the reason they have a hiking season is to stop you going when it's too hot. And also there's the Fish River Canyon, in theory, is a river, but the river only runs for part of the year, and then it sort of dries up until summer. So
I'm getting a sense of what's coming.
getting a sense of why this was probably more dangerous than we realized. So we're going down into the canyon, and there's the three of us. We meet up with another three people. One of them happens to be a medical student. We're like, brilliant, we can get a couple of ideas as we go, if about our health and things. And I must say, the first thing that happened was we realized how hot it was. And I like hot, but this was like another level of hot. And in a canyon, there's no trees. There's not a lot of shade. So if you wanted shade, you had to go to the side of the canyon just to find a rock. So when I say hot, it was really, really hot.
So what, like 40-ish, 45?
Yeah, it would have been about 40.
Oh.
Yeah, so yeah, in the middle of the day. And obviously it gets cooler in the evening. So we're like, okay, we just won't hike in the very middle of the day. We'll rest. And then we'll sort of keep going in the late afternoon. So we get to our first camp, and it's sort of starting to get a bit dusk and dark because we've waited until the evening. We've drunk most of our water, and we head off to find the well. And then we realize that we put our little bucket down. There's actually not much water. It's more sludgy, brown sludgy. And we'd also went then to have a look around the river, and most of the river has sort of gone into these like very small little puddles, which again, just sludgy and smelly and disgusting. So okay, this isn't so good, but we're only at the start of the canyon, and the canyon goes down. So the deeper we get, the better this should be. So that night we sort of bunk down, cools down a lot. So you feel a lot better in the evening. We get some sleep. We regroup in the morning, look at the guidebooks and go, okay, it said we should be able to hit another 2 wells, depending on how far we walk this day. Let's ration the water that we have and press on a bit. And we all agreed that that would be okay. We're all pretty young and naive. And
thinking positive, right?
Like thinking very positively, still in good spirits at this point.
Yes.
But that day, again, it gets super hot. It's 40 degrees. We have less water. There's actually even less shade in the canyon. So we we wait in the middle of the day. We sort of rest and lie around, sort of and camp. We get to our second camp again, starting in the evening. Go to the well, again, very sludgy, not so good. So we're like, okay, let's press on to camp 3. That must be better.
Can you use the water at all, or it's not drinkable?
No, so we didn't have the right gear to completely filtrate water. So I think these days you could probably buy the right kit. We did not have that. So
all that sludgy water was not drinkable.
That sludgy water was not at all drinkable. But we could tell clearly there was water. So that actually made us think, let's just keep going, because the water table probably just goes down, and the book says, camp 3 has the best water. So we get to camp 3, and by this point we're actually all very tired, very irritable. We don't have much water left. And people are starting to actually get what I now appreciate as symptoms of dehydration. So you start to hallucinate, you become really difficult and challenging and annoyed, and tempers are fraying, and arguments are breaking out. And it's just, we're just not in a good place when we get to camp 3. And as you can expect, we go to the well, and even though there's more sort of sludge, it's still not at a point that we can actually get water off the top. There is no layer of water. It's just all sludgy. So we estimate we're sort of 40 to 50 kilometers in, which is unfortunately about halfway. So you've then got 50 to 50K out as well. And no one's really expecting us for a few days. And the people with dehydration are actually progressively, they're getting worse. They're becoming really difficult. One of them is.
Did you realize you were all dehydrated, or like how? Yeah, what did you realize was happening at the time?
I realized it wasn't good. And I come from, Queensland where people do die in the outback
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
dehydrated. So I appreciated that this was a really bad situation. In fact, I probably appreciated more than the others how bad the situation was. The girl who was the medical student, she
Uh-huh.
appreciated that the two people with dehydration actually shouldn't keep going, that they needed to just stay because they were actually losing it.
Right.
And they were beyond our ability to help them at that point.
Yeah.
So, look, we were sort of standing around and everyone was arguing, and I just went, okay, let's all put forward an option. Okay, clearly
Yeah.
we have different perspectives on what's happened here. Let's put forward what we think the best next option is. And my best next option was I could run about 20K. That was sort of halfway. I figured I could probably run maybe 40.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit more used to the heat. So I'm like, I'll just run out and I'll come back and get you.
Get help.
And
Yeah.
but no one like that, because people very much wanted to stick together.
Get
And
yeah.
also you're in the desert in a foreign country. There was an
Yeah.
element of but safety and hey, that's just
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Plus the heat and running, you'll probably just die and then no one will know we're here anyway. So no one said those words, just to be clear. No one said those exact words, but
Yeah.
that was clearly what people were thinking. So I
Yeah.
ran forward a different idea. And out of the different ideas, there were some useful things like let's use darkness to do the walking.
Yeah.
Let's make sure nobody's actually left on their own. So even though I don't think anyone had the best idea, we then agreed that the best idea was probably not just me going, but one of the other guys said, actually, I can run too. I can come with you. And that way there's two of us. So we can make sure that we're both okay. Everyone else stays here and they rest. And we split the water. So, because some people had water and other people didn't. So it's like, okay, let's split the water. The two runners get half, the people who stay get half, and we leave pretty much as soon as we can. So we're largely going in the darkness. So even though it's nighttime, when you're in the desert, you've got a great moon, you've got great stars, and we have
unimpacted moonlight and stars, so you can actually see. What was how are you all feeling inside though?
Horrible. So very uncomfortable, I think, to use your uncomfortable.
I think I'd be feeling panicked. Like, I think I'd be beyond uncomfortable at this point.
Yeah. So I have to say, I definitely didn't panic. And I don't think in the moment, because I don't think anyone appreciated the scale of the issue. Because again, it's the evening. In the evenings, we all felt better because it got cooler. And there was, the ability to rest and sort of get recharge. We had people together. So the advantage of the group. Yes. We actually had food, even though we didn't have water. So there wasn't a sense of panic, but there was a heightened sense of people were quite tense. And as I said, everyone had a different perspective on what to do. But we did end up agreeing that, Jason and I would run out. And so we actually got about 2 hours sleep and then got up and then started to run out. And I have to say, while it was dark, it was actually okay. When the sun started coming up, it was horrible. Like you're exhausted, you're dehydrated, you're barely functioning. To this day, I could not tell you how we made it out because it is a blur. And I do remember several times just falling, but each time, Dace sort of picking me up. And similarly, one time I remember him falling down a couple of rocks and grazing the whole side of his leg and just going, fuck, that's it. And I'm like, no, think of the amazing story you're going to be able to tell us with this. It's like you'll have this great scar.
That's right. You'll be able to tell everyone.
Exactly.
It'll be funny, and you can tell it over a beer while you're drinking these.
Yeah, completely. This will pull you women, Jay. So look, we made it back, which is obviously the good part of the story. Hence I'm here, and we got to the farm, and they sent some people down with water.
So did you end up? You went backwards the way you came, or you went forwards the way?
Went forwards, because if we went backwards, we didn't know if anyone would be there. And we'd have to go back to the highway, which was even further, and then we'd have to hail something on the highway and get to a city. So that felt like the longer option.
Yeah.
Going forwards felt like sort of the better
Yeah.
option, even though we actually had no idea what the trial would be like. There is something
Mm.
about always moving forwards too that's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. It was like, no, no, if we move forward, we're at least
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And then there was the farm at the
yeah,
end. So it was in retrospect, it was the better option.
definitely the better option. And there were people on the farm too that could actually
Yeah.
go in and help. So it
Oh,
definitely
wow.
ended up being the better option. But I then look at the time, I must say, like you don't think through what are all the things that I learned here.
Yes. It's like, I'm safe. I made it. I'm not dead.
Exactly. And that was all I thought about for quite a long time. And that the body can do amazing things. But it did in sort of retrospect, there are some really big things that I took out about it that I initially applied to sort of adventures, but then I realized actually it applies to life. Um,
Mm.
one of which is in a crisis, you actually need a plan. It doesn't have to be a perfect plan, but you need a plan, and you need a
Yeah.
plan that helps you keep moving forward, that
Mm.
people are sort of aware of and can contribute to.
Yeah.
Um, and that's probably the second one. Like my initial thought was actually a really shit thought. Like if I had have gone on my own, that probably would have not been the best outcome.
Yeah.
But the ability to get different ideas and build on that
Yeah.
actually got us to a great outcome. So that ability to
Yeah.
sort of change your plan with different ideas and different thinking and a
Yeah.
diversity of thoughts got us
Yeah.
to a good plan that got us safe and got us out.
Yeah. And I guess multiple factors, because like, I mean, yes, there was getting help, but then like you're talking about how it wasn't smart to be alone. So that
Oh,
was like an extra overlay on top of getting out. And then it
yeah,
was, who were the people who were best able to run while the others rest, and then how to figure
yeah.
out the water, which was, because I mean, again, like if you were running 40 kilometers or whatever it was, that's a really long way. Like, and you
Yeah.
guys only took half the water.
Yeah, we hardly had any water, which is again in retrospect not ideal. And very lucky there were two of us, and very lucky
Mm,
most of it was in the dark and cool. We
yeah,
couldn't have done it in the heat of day.
yeah.
And
Because like, yeah,
probably
because if this had happened, say at the start of the day, that decision, and you either would have had to wait another 12
yeah.
hours because you couldn't have done it, but that could have made you even more
Oh, it would have
dehydrated.
been far worse. Yeah, far worse for the people who were quite dehydrated. Um,
Yeah.
the other really big thing for me is, which I've taken into life, is just know who the people who are going to pull you up are. So when things are hard, who are
Mm,
your people? And always
mm,
have someone, because I didn't appreciate how important that would be in that situation.
mm,
But equally in life, we all know when things are tough, you want to have
mhm,
that special person or people that you can go
mhm.
to and you can talk to and who are going to help
Yeah.
you.
And
And
just keep
yeah,
you going, I guess, because I have such a visceral picture in my head from your description, and you know, falling over the rocks and picking each other up and thinking, I'm done, I can't go on. And it's like, no, you need
yeah,
to think about the story you'll be able to tell. So there is so much in that around just when you're feeling really down, who's the person who can just
absolutely.
keep you going, even when you really don't feel like it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes we undervalue, especially as leaders, because leadership is lonely. You know that when
Yeah,
you're in a senior
yeah,
marketing role,
yeah,
running a big team, you
yeah,
often do feel like you're out there on your own.
yeah,
It was such a good life lesson that no one succeeds on their own.
yeah,
You always need people to help, and you
yeah,
always need to have that person who, in those low moments, is going to pull
yeah,
you out and remind you how
yeah.
great things are.
Yeah, yeah, that you will get there. That
Yeah,
it won't be
exactly.
over. It will come to an end.
Yeah.
Just keep going now.
Yeah. And that sometimes your low moments, or hopefully your low moments, are someone else is actually okay. And then you can
Yeah,
actually help them
yeah,
when they're not okay. So it's made
exactly.
me a much better friend too. I always now look out for my friends. It's like
Yeah,
you might need
yeah, yeah.
some.
And just recognize, yeah, we're all going to have low moments, as you
Yeah.
say, hopefully not all at the same time.
No.
But that is life, right? Like it's the It's the up and
Very
down.
much. Yeah, very much.
Yeah. Wow, what an amazing story. And
Mm.
you still love hiking.
Yeah, so if anything, I think it really
Mhm.
helps solidify how much I love being outdoors
Yeah.
because as long as you're prepared, and I'm so much better at planning, Rosh,
Yeah.
that would never happen to me again,
Uh-huh.
because I now am immaculate in looking into the trail,
Yeah.
the conditions, the weather, the gear I need.
Yeah.
It's made me a much better hiker, much better trail runner, but it just grew my love of that because I realized what your body's capable of. It's, you
Yeah.
think these things are hard, but you can do them. And it's that in
Yeah.
doing them, you realize what you're capable of. So yeah, it actually, after that, I did 100-kilometer race and a couple marathons and things. I was like, wow, my body can do this stuff. And I would never have had the confidence before that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in that moment, you had to do it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't kind of opt in. It was, we have to do this or we're all going to die.
Yeah. And that's a good lesson, though, that you are capable of so much more than you think. Um,
Mm, mm.
so
Wow.
anyway, I
Good
took away so
story.
much from that. That was
Yeah.
fantastic. And then
How old were you when this all went down? How old?
this is over 20 years ago. So I was a
Mhm.
lot younger
A lot younger.
and a lot less traveled and
Yeah.
yeah, a lot less prepared for things in life. And I think when you're young, you think you're a little invincible.
Yeah.
And I now know no one is invincible. Be prepared.
That's right. So as you were saying earlier, you're like pushed to the edge.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that was my edge.
keep going. Keep like hopefully you can keep going. Yeah. No, that's such a great story. And I think so many of our greatest lessons come from just these experiences which are extreme, right?
Yes.
Where you are outside of your comfort zone or things don't go to plan or it's an extreme situation which you've never coped with before. And and like what do you actually do in the moment? Because
Yeah.
I don't think you really know until you're in that moment. We can all hypothesize, but
Yeah.
being there and having to live it is a very different thing than thinking about what I would do.
Agree. And I often get asked how do you react in a crisis? It's like, oh, I
Mm.
know that.
Yeah.
You don't.
This is just a business crisis.
Yeah.
This was a life crisis.
Yeah. But it was a good realization. So people do react differently in crises.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, the good thing for me is I do go to a calm place in a crisis
Mm.
and it enables me to think through things. And that I
Mm.
have definitely taken into whenever I'm in a situation that's incredibly stressful or incredibly difficult. I'm
Mm.
like, oh no, I can work through this. We can
Mm.
breathe.
Mm.
That is a good thing to understand. What
Mm.
do you do in a crisis? What are your
Yeah.
triggers?
Yeah.
How do
How
you
do you
move through?
react?
Yeah,
How do you cope? Because yeah,
yeah,
you don't really know. I've often wondered too about when people had to go to war
yeah,
and you see all the war movies and people had to get up out of the trenches and there'd be bullets flying, but they were told they had to or they'd get shot.
yeah,
I just think like I don't know, like just getting out of that trench and walking forward
yeah.
is just must have been so incredibly difficult. And these sort of conditions and situations went for months and years.
Oh, completely. And yeah, look, I have no idea how I would react in that situation, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
This is the weird things my mind
yeah,
thinks about, but I do think the principle of you don't really know how you'll respond or what you're capable of, to your
yeah,
point, until you're in it. And it's not something that you'd necessarily choose, but we all end
yeah,
up in those situations, right? Where something's gone very awry and it's not gone to plan, and you're in a really difficult situation. And what do you do? And just
yeah.
even knowing how you react is a source of deep insight and knowledge that can help you so much in the future.
Completely. And also what are your different ways of staying calm? So
Yeah.
I now inadvertently, my biggest sense of calm comes from running,
Yeah.
or hiking. It's like that is my happy place.
Yeah.
If I go for a run, if I'm stressed, I go for a run. I'm
Yep.
calm. Yeah, and I don't know if I had that before this,
Yeah.
but certainly now I'm at my most peaceful if I'm
Yeah.
running along, or walking
Yeah.
along. It enables me to think through things, work through things,
Yeah.
appreciate nature, put
Yep.
life into perspective. And I think that that's been very useful for me, especially going into
Mm.
a job like the ABC, which, news and
Yep.
working in
Yep.
the media, it's got quite a lot of stress. So it's
Yeah.
very good to know this is my way of working through stress.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
how I keep myself calm.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important because yeah, like we all have different reactions, but we also have different ways of releasing stress
Yeah.
or knowing how to get back to calm.
Yes.
And when you kind of look at it as, okay, this is what's going to work best for me, it can be such a great part of your routine or ongoing behavior to manage stress.
Oh,
Because
completely.
because I mean, we're all living in really a stressful world. Like it just is, right? We're all
Yeah.
trying to do so much and there's so many things being thrown at us and it's 24/7 and it's post-COVID and there are so many different elements. And I've often thought that being able to really understand, like know yourself to self-manage yourself is
Yes.
a huge part. And perhaps that's something we need to get better at as a society because like I was talking to you before, I've been doing these little experiments with people kind of around this idea of how do we identify our triggers, but then also how do we move out of those triggers that can cause a down spiral. And,
Yes.
what works for me looks different to what works to other people. And that's to be expected because we're all different. But if you don't have that knowledge, you can get caught in the down spiral. And so I love your point that running is your happy place
Yeah.
and that that. And which I kind of think is a little ironic given the Kenyan story. But anyway, back to the Kenyan. Running 40Ks, but it works for you. And just knowing that you've got that and knowing when you're feeling your stress rise that, okay, it's time to go for a run,
Yeah.
um, keeps you in a good place rather than a vulnerable place where the stress builds and it can spiral and it can become bigger. Because that's what stress does, right? It gets bigger in our heads. And then
Yes.
our body reacts.
Yeah.
Our heart reacts and we end up in a very high adrenaline, high stress situation where it is harder to think. It is
Yeah.
harder to make good decisions. And there's so much data on that now. Just high risk, high stress does not lead to good decisions either. So yeah, so fascinating. Wow. So I definitely didn't know that story about you, Leisa, but I have very vivid imagery now of Africa and this canyon and you offering to run 40 kilometers with no
So,
water.
yeah, so it's worth saying very few people know that story. And it was only that when I was at the ABC and they asked me to come along and talk to one of my teams at one point and
Mm,
tell a story about being vulnerable. And I was like,
mm,
oh, what can I tell? And then I was like, let me tell you this story.
yeah.
And they were all like, oh my God, that's really interesting. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah, one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
Always pack more water. Always pack more
Yeah.
water.
Always. That is actually also a good hiking lesson.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
is. And you said you've got a second story as well.
Yeah. So I did want to obviously give you something professional.
Uh-huh.
So I guess one of my biggest challenges from a professional capacity was actually when I did go into work for the ABC. It was back in 2014. I went in as the first director of audience and marketing. So it was a new role. And I had next to no direct reports because at that time, everybody in marketing and creative, or the majority of marketing creative and research people, sat in the different divisions. The divisions were
Mm,
like news, TV, radio, digital, commercial, international. So they were all interspersed throughout the organisation. And I was brought in to build a central team, but also to find efficiencies as the ABC was going to have some budget cuts. So obviously that does not make you a very popular person. So you're being dropped in. You're pulling people out of divisions where they're probably quite happy. The directors running those divisions are actually quite happy having their people. And everyone that knows that you're actually there to reduce the headcount. So it was a really difficult 6 months because you're creating a new structure, a new processes, new ways of working, but you don't necessarily have anyone on board with being in your team.
You've got a lot of resistance.
And I think it really made me think about, who is there to help me up. And I was incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic leader in Mark Scott, the managing director, who just backed me from day one. He's like, I'm on your team. So you need to let me know what you need to succeed. And one of my peers, the director of TV, Richard Finlayson, was also fantastic. And that helped because it is in a tough environment. You just need someone on your team to really make sure that you can just bounce things off. And so took a while to sort of set up a new team, and it was, as I said, in a difficult environment, in a cost-cutting environment. I literally had other directors in my peer set say to me, I don't even know why your job exists. And I'd never had that in my career. I'd always worked for companies that, where marketing was appreciated and valued and very much at the center of strategy and conversations. So to go into media and to hear, I don't know why we, brand, why are you talking about brand? We run some promos. So I think it was a little bit of culture shock as well. And I was incredibly fortunate that I had some people that backed me. I had a very supportive family. And also, I think a level of resilience, having worked, for those great organizations, like we work together, and companies like Coke, who make you appreciate how good marketing can be. So I knew where we could go. So I had that belief and that vision for where we could get to. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And that, that took a while for me to work through. And I got really fit, as you can imagine.
Lots of running. 20K a day.
It actually got to the point where I'd get home and my husband just had my sand shoes at the front door, and he'd just like, before you come in, have a little run, like,
get it out, hit the pavement.
Exactly, get it out. But I ended up loving it. So the thing about the ABC is it's like a lot of companies and organizations, the job becomes what you make of it. And and I loved the content, I love what the organization did. I grew to, we ended up with a fantastic team. We did so much great work. The team grew in all different areas and were, they delivered so many amazing things. So it did take a little while. 12 months of really hard work, I'm going to say, but for 9 years of fantastic. So, that's a pretty good equation at the end of the day.
I think it's like such an important story too, because there are lots of restructures and redesigns constantly now, and I'm sure they'll continue to be, particularly with the new technology coming down the pipeline, which we're all seeing. Very visible with AI. But it is really hard when you've got a mandate from the top. So you've been hired in, but the people who you need to contribute, collaborate, and support you are not on board.
No.
Like they're actually against it. Because from their world, it's like, it's good when I have my own research people and insights people and, creative people. Like I want them focused on my stuff. And I can make that happen when they're in my team. So, and you would have had a lot of people that you had to influence, right? Because there were so many different departments where that was embedded. So it wasn't just a few groups, you had a lot of groups. So talk to me about that and how you found working with the different personalities, because there's always, people come from so many different points
Yeah.
and places as well. So yeah, talk to me about
Yeah,
that.
so to your point, it's a people game. At the end of the day, leadership is a people game, and I used to call it winning hearts and minds. So my job was to win the hearts and minds of my peer set and my team.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
had to have a vision, a compelling vision. I had to build a team that people wanted to be on, which meant you had to deliver great work, and they had to get excited about the sorts of things that they were working on. So I had to find new, interesting things. But more importantly, I had to show them what that would look like. And again, incredibly fortunate to have come from a background where I did know what good would look like. And the ABC had not invested a lot in brand. It was very much around programs. The future in a very fragmented media environment was going to be brand. And I felt the ABC is one of the best media brands in the country, and probably the best media brand in the country, certainly the best news brand, most trusted brand. So we had all these fantastic assets that we just weren't talking about. So I just had to help people see that and understand that. But to your point, everyone's different. Every stakeholder is different. So my first job was to understand them and how I could help them. So if you start with a bit of a customer service mentality, so you're the director of news, you don't want to hear about marketing. What can I do for you? You want more people to actually read the stories of the journalists. So here's how I can help with that. We improve SEO. We, get out on more platforms. We, start YouTube channels. There was a whole heap of things in my armory, but I just had to understand the needs of the different teams and the best way to talk about it. And I quickly learned at the ABC, it was not talking about marketing. It was talking about how am I going to help you grow your audience? So let's talk about where
they
are
cared about.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they care about. And rightly so. Content makers, they spend so much time, energy, effort, passion to create content. So they want to know that that content is going to reach as many people as possible. And my job was to help them do that. So help them understand their audience, help them understand where that audience was and how we would get that content to them. So that became the job. It's like, understand what you as a director are looking for, and here's how I and my new team can help deliver that in a better way than we've ever been able to. And that's largely about prioritization. It's about building our brands and products as well as our content. So that ABC is just this marker for trust. So whatever platform we're on, people are going to know that that is quality content. And you don't appreciate, they may not appreciate right now why that was important, but in 5-10 years, it will be the most important thing, because content will be everywhere. And your brand will suddenly become incredibly important. So a little bit was also talking about where the market was heading, where the future was going, how brand in media would actually become more and more important.
Yeah. And did you find that some people just didn't get on board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people were harder than others, but every now and then you do get someone who's not on board, and then you have to work out, okay, if you're not entirely on board, I still need a way of connecting with you, and it might not be on this thing, but there might be something else that you need that I can help you with. It might be that you want market research on XYZ. I can do that. My team can do that, and we can do it really well. So if you don't win at first, you keep working out what are the different avenues in. But to your point, you never get everyone on board straight away.
Exactly.
And some people will never be completely on board. And that's actually okay, as long as they respect the work that you're doing and they understand how you can help and contribute to that.
Yeah. And don't intentionally undermine.
No, never. Yeah,
because that's also really difficult. I think those are like such important conversations, because the role that you're describing, particularly when you first went in, is influence, right? Like influence was the key skill required. And it's really interesting, when I talk to people about leadership and influence, and I'll always say influence is a higher order form of leadership. And people are like, really? Why? And I said, because you don't have hierarchy to bring people automatically in line. When you're having to influence people who don't have to agree with you or can choose to actively disagree with you, that's much harder to, get an outcome and bring people together than if there's hierarchy and people kind of know, well, they're the boss, or
Yeah.
it's their job to decide, so I'll fall into line. And and because I know, like, you built, when we did some work together, you built such a brilliant department, but and the outcomes that you guys achieved, like, have really repositioned ABC. Like, particularly in an era of fake news,
Yeah.
like the ABC stands out. I just think about COVID and when people really needed to know truth and independence, like ABC stands out. So your vision was spot on, but just getting there, I think the amount of work you had to do to influence. And to your point, ABC, the center of gravity is not marketing.
No.
Unlike, FMCG companies where we've both worked before, where marketing is the center of gravity. Here it wasn't. So being able to work in a different system, understand what was important, how to bring your peers together, but also then the teams, right? Because the teams had never worked together. And so you had people coming from radio versus, TV versus, or like, that must have been a massive challenge as well.
Yeah, look, it's fair to say everything was a challenge, right? It was just an order of magnitude.
Depended on the year.
Yeah. And number one, though, if you think about when you start a new job, it's like, number one, have you got your boss on board? And that tick,
Yeah.
he was fabulous. Number two, your colleagues, because you can't succeed in any organization without your colleagues. So that was sort of a very important group for me to really understand. And then also the team, and setting up how the team worked and how they would work together across very disparate areas and different experiences and different ways of working. And, coming from FMCG, I had a very different perspective on the role of marketing and also the value that we could add. So I wanted us to have different conversations. I wanted us to be sitting at the table talking about, where the market was going, the sort of platforms our content needed to be on. Like that's part of the role of the team. And we had not been in those conversations. So that also made a lot of people really uncomfortable. So there were so many different elements to actually work through. And part of it did involve changing some of the team, and we brought in different people who were able to bring different skills to enable those conversations. There were also changes in my colleagues in that time, most of which were actually very helpful for me, because when someone new comes in, they're actually more open to doing things differently. So I had some fabulous directors of news. And if you work in a media company like the ABC, and you talk about center of gravity, news is very important.
Yes.
From a stakeholder perspective, I used to think of them as number one.
Yeah.
And having a seat at their table to have a conversation about their audience and growth opportunities, very important to build credibility to do that, and very, very hard. You really have to understand their business and what they're trying to do and how you can help them to do that. And then your team need to realize that that's their job as well, helping them to achieve those things. And yes, you've got to build the brand, and that's a collaborative approach with both of you. But part of their job is really understanding what they're trying to do. So I think it's a very different type of marketing job.
Yes.
And much more full of influence. I've learned so much about how to manage stakeholders. I still remember, I often reflect back to my initial conversation I had with Mark Scott about the job. And I was talking about marketing at one point, and he said, don't worry about talking about marketing. I know you can market. Okay. Let's talk about stakeholders. And I did not realize at that time that that's what he really meant. He really meant this is actually a stakeholder management job as much as a marketing job. And all those marketing skills, that's great. But more important would be how you actually make things happen in a big organization like the ABC.
Yeah, great advice. So from an uncomfortable growth perspective, like, what were the big highlights from your time at the ABC?
Well, that number one would be the importance of understanding people and their motivations. So spending the time up front to sit down and understand people and not put your way of thinking onto somebody else.
Yeah.
So, and that required a level of maturity I wouldn't have had, 20 years ago in my career. That actually it's not about me and what I think. I really need to understand you and what you are looking for, and we
Yeah.
need to be partners in achieving that. So it
Yeah.
was very much a mindset change that the
Yes.
stakeholders, they're really important, and my job is to work with them to achieve
Yes.
outcomes. So there was a level of uncomfortableness when you are a naturally strong marketing leader and you want to just come
Uh-huh.
in and
Yeah.
do to no,
Uh-huh.
that's not this job. This job,
Yeah.
first of all, is a stakeholder job. So
Yeah.
understand the stakeholders.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do compromise. So I had very strong perspectives on how to do marketing. The ABC was not necessarily up for all of those,
Yeah.
So I like very risky marketing because it cuts through.
Uh-huh.
And strong, risky creative, it
Yeah.
cuts through. If you are Australia's most trusted broadcaster, you're not doing really risky creative. Yes, you can do some brave things, but it tends to be in news that you tell brave stories.
Yeah.
Your role in marketing is helping to surface that, not
Yeah.
to build a risky brand. You're building a trusted, credible
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so in terms of different things that I learned, the stakeholder management, but
Mm.
also really know your brand and the role of your brand
Mm.
and be true and authentic to that brand.
Yeah.
It's not so much about marketing as it is so much about really understanding the brand.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the third really uncomfortable thing was I had always relied in my career on people knowing that marketing was important and I was good at my job.
Yeah.
It was incredibly uncomfortable going into an organization where none of that mattered. So
Yes.
from day dot, you you had to prove value, you had to prove credibility.
Yeah.
And you had to build that over time because you don't instantly get credibility and you can't
Mm.
instantly prove and demonstrate value. So
Mm.
yes, you have your vision, but you've actually got to do the whole
Mm.
deliver. And so you
With other
initially
people
completely. And
who
what
don't
am I
report to you.
completely? And what are my quick wins to demonstrate value so that
Yeah.
I build trust and that we can go on this journey together? But it
Mm.
was deeply uncomfortable having no
Mm.
perceived value in an organization for a little while. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm building credibility from scratch. And I hadn't had to do that, I think, since my first job. So
Yeah.
that was probably the hardest thing, just that mindset shift
Yeah.
of actually to this group of people,
Yeah.
working for these big blue chip FMCG companies, it doesn't matter at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're great insights. Because I also think too, like if we think about where the world is going, there's going to be so many more collaborations, I think, to try and solve some of the big problems.
Yes.
And and business models are also going to pivot, which will lead to new partnerships. And I do think that influence is going to be the most important skill within that because you need to figure out what the 1 + 1 is that
Yeah.
equals 5. And it's not just going to come from one mind or one department. And I
No.
think, in the past, there were, the departments were very clear about what they did and, they held their credibility depending on the center of gravity. But that won't be the case, I think. And I'll often talk about horizontal growth, right? So, we're used to vertical growth with all the departments, but actually growth happens when all of the pieces come together. So it's horizontal. And being able to genuinely influence, to collaborate and co-create where you don't know what someone else knows and they don't know what you know and neither of you understands each other's experiences or background. You have to find out about the person as well as the project or the challenge or the vision that you're trying to deliver. And and that is just going to be so much more the way of the world. And that is, I think, it's a really hard skill set because it requires not only you building your credibility, as you said, but also being able to step back and really think about the other person and then also think about the project. And often it's not just one person, right? Often
Yeah.
it's multiple. And I I would encourage anyone who's, thinking about their next job to think about a job that will really develop your influence skills. And like you were just saying, it's been such a huge growth curve for you, but such a great, skill set that you now are a master in to be able to put next to all the other stuff you've always known about marketing and what actually drives consumer behavior. So
Yeah, agreed. The other thing that you touched on, which I have also come to realize is incredibly important for, I would say, every organization, is partnerships. Because the
mm,
problems of the future, they're not
mm,
solved by one person or one company.
mm,
And different types of partnerships, I think, is definitely how we will succeed in the future. And I
mm,
don't know if all companies value that as much as they should yet. So
mm,
it was really interesting for me working in media. Like, it doesn't matter how
mm.
great your content is, if you can't reach the audience,
Yes,
you're making something that no one's seeing. So, and increasingly, you don't own the way to reach the audience. So
yes,
you used to have the TV and radio channels, and people were turning on TVs and radios. But right now, there are intermediaries everywhere
yeah,
in front of the consumer. So you have to actually know how to work with all of those different players, because effectively
yes,
they're now your partners. And
yes,
it's without them, you're not reaching your audience. So whether they're social media platforms, whether they're manufacturers of TV sets, like, there
mm-hmm.
are so many more players in every market. And how
Mm,
you work with them to succeed together is going to be the difference between success and failure. And I
mm.
think it was always understood in FMCG that, you make a product, but without a retailer, you're not getting
Yes,
to the
yeah,
consumer. I don't know if all other industries appreciated that that need to actually work together with different
yes,
players to
yes,
reach a consumer and audience member is really important. And some people say, oh, but we're now selling direct to the audience over online. I'm like, well, are you? Are you going through Amazon?
yes,
Is it a Google search term? Are you
yeah,
marketing on Facebook? They're
yeah,
really all partnerships. And
yeah,
you should
they
be
are.
thinking about them in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, great point. Great point. Because, and that's where there's dual influence, right? Like they influence us and we influence them, and,
Exactly. Yes.
and that is a partnership. So that's a really great point. Wow. So what a great conversation. I'm going to close us off with some quick fire questions. So, what is important to you at the moment in your life?
Wow. Okay. That's a big question.
Straight in there, Lisa. Straight in there.
Okay, so as I mentioned to you earlier, I am about to spend 2 months hiking. So right now, being fit enough to complete that hike is super important. So I am doing quite a bit of training, much more conscious about my health, and
Mm.
I'm really focused on making sure that it's an enjoyable 2 months of hiking, and I have a lot of fun with my
Plenty of
daughter.
water.
Yes,
All
exactly.
the
And
all the
I'm
good
very
work's done.
prepared, very prepared. Yes. Yeah.
That's good. And just on your health, like I know, you've been in a really full-on job for a decade, and now you've got a couple of months off. What have you discovered about your health?
That I didn't prioritize it enough would be number one. And that health is a holistic thing. So I used to think, okay, if I was running a few times a week, I'm looking after my health. No, no, no.
Mm,
It's eating right, it's sleeping right, it's mental health, it's physical health. So I have spent quite a bit of time. Actually, I've been doing quite a lot of research because I'm very
mm,
passionate about this, particularly for women as they
mm,
age. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can. So
mm,
doing a lot more weights because that's really good for our bones. I'm eating a
mhm,
lot more plant-based food. That's, really good for the nutrition for our bodies. I'm doing a lot more walking as well.
mm,
I've started doing some meditation. I'm
mhm,
trying some cold water therapy. So I think about it a lot more holistically than I used to, which is, let me do my 3 runs a week and a couple of half marathons and I'm good. Actually, that was not good. That was not very holistic.
Yeah, yeah. I think I wanted to go a bit deeper on that because I think there is the part which is how do we relieve stress? And that's usually what we force in when we're really busy, right? Like it's
Yes.
the 3 runs a week or whatever is your thing to do that. But there's also the piece which is around how do you find time to play and just be, like in that positive state where you can explore and that takes space, right?
Yes.
So there's the like relief stress, but there's also the how do I how do I really cultivate the positives that come from being able to not just relieve stress, to actually find what is it that brings me joy. And I think that that's such a big opportunity for society. And I know everyone's really time poor at the same time, but figuring out how to not think of just health as, the primary must do things. There's also the things that bring you joy, because that shifts your mindset as well and shifts your ability to have energy to do things with positivity.
Look, I could not agree more. So I feel incredibly fortunate. I have a couple of girlfriends. We run together once a week. And when I say run, we jog, we chat, we have coffee at the end. Like it's a social outing as much as it is a run.
Yeah.
But it's my sanity. Like I love that time and I value it so much. Equally,
Mm.
I have two dogs and
Mhm.
walking them because dogs are just happy,
They are
like
just
Reynolds,
happy.
they're happy to be alive. So I often just look at
Uh,
them and think, wow, how do I take some of that just happy to be alive energy
yeah.
into
Yeah.
my everyday? And when my daughter and husband, we try and walk the dogs once a day together. It's like, this
Yeah.
is the nicest family time, walking along
Yeah.
the beach with our dogs together, chatting about the day. So I do talk about health as fitness, but the truth is, it's also the thing that brings me the most joy. And
Mm.
I would not give that up for anything. Like I love that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so important. Like it's as important as the full on run.
Yes,
Like
yes.
it's bringing wellness in a different way, but all part of us as humans. So yeah, no, that brilliant. I'm so glad that you're getting the chance to explore all of that.
Yeah.
That's good. Last question, but there's three parts, of course. What is a current fear, a current inspiration, and a current challenge for you at the moment? So we've got fear, inspiration, and challenge.
Okay, my current fear would definitely be that something I hurt, I get injured before I go hiking. So that's like very top of mind. So, which is why
Mhm.
I'm quite conscious about taking it holistically, the whole health journey.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I think that I have never been as involved in my health as I am right now. And something that is linked to the inspiration bit is because I'm then doing some research. I'm so inspired about the women sort of investing in research, in medical research
Mm.
at the moment in areas like perimenopause and menopause. And I'm so proud to be part of this generation where there is so much discussion about this and making sure that as our daughters grow up, they're far more aware of their health, they're far more
Yeah.
aware of the life changes that their bodies will go through, and they're
Yes.
able to do the right things and put the right things in place for that. Because I look at my mum and I don't think her generation knew, and as a result, there weren't a lot of women still in the workforce over 40, and there
Mhm.
certainly weren't in high management levels. And I think that part of that is because they didn't know enough about managing their health,
Yeah.
and really looking after themselves. So they just sort of quietly disappeared. And
Yeah.
the workforce is certainly in senior roles and boards dominated by men. We
Yes.
all want that to change. And I'm
Yeah.
inspired by the women who are changing that. And also, in particular, those who are looking at the health aspect of
Yeah.
that, because I think that is an enabler. That's an enabler for everybody.
A critical enabler. Absolutely. Excuse me. And last one is challenge for you at the moment.
Uh, challenge is probably I'm I have a bit of time, and I'm one of those people when that you have time, I find all the things that I want to do with that. So my biggest challenge right now is making sure I'm making the most of that time and not just doing everything that crops up. So I'm very excited about AI as an example. So I'm like,
Mm.
oh, okay, let me go to some classes, let me learn all about that. And then I realize it is so big and there's so
Yeah.
much to look at and so much to learn. And let's be honest, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, which makes it
Hmm.
fascinating and interesting. But it
Mm.
means also you can't learn everything at once. So it's like
Mm.
I have to moderate everything that I'm interested in right now. And I'm incredibly interested in nutrition and in health.
Uh-huh.
And yes, I could lose all of my time there, but I have to like put that down. So just taking stock of, I have a bit of time, but
Yeah.
let me use that to the greatest benefit to learn a little bit about all of these things, but not totally overtake my life just like a job does,
Yeah.
which is my tendency. It's like, oh, I'm interested in that. Let me sort of dive really, really deep. So just spend
Yeah.
a little bit more time, higher level, to learn the things I'm interested in, but not let them overtake my life. Give
Yes.
that to have a couple of months hiking.
Yeah. I remember Rose Herseg said to me that what she was enjoying was learning how to enjoy the art of doing nothing. And I think that there's a lot to be said in that because we're excited and curious. So there's all these things that we want to do, but also it's like enjoy just being as well. Enjoy the moments, like you were saying, walk the dog. I sometimes watch my cat, who takes 5 seconds just to stretch. And I'm like, maybe I should take 5 seconds just to stretch. Like, how do I enjoy just being rather
Yes.
than just doing? And I think we're all so used to doing that we need to relearn how to just be in balance,
Yeah.
because there is so much that can come from that as well. So I can totally appreciate where you're at, particularly when you're used to being full throttle, you know, every
Yeah.
day in a very demanding but rewarding job. Like you kind of you get into that routine, into that adrenaline routine, and it just kind of it's like, oh, now I have to detox.
I will say though, the thing I most love about hiking is
Mm,
it forces you to be present. So you are
mm,
in nature, there is no technology, there's no Wi-Fi,
mm.
and you are just immersed in your environment. It is,
Yeah,
for me, it is the most grounding thing that I
yeah,
do. And it's why I enjoy it so much, because you're present, you're looking at nature, you're caring about the weather, you're looking at the birds and the butterflies
yeah,
and the plants. And
yeah.
I love that forced presence,
Yes,
where you are really appreciating the environment that you're in, and there are
yeah.
no distractions, there's no notifications going off. Again, it's one of the things that brings me the most joy, that
Yeah,
total immersion in nature and being in your environment and really appreciating your environment.
yeah, that's so true. And just beautiful, like you said, like just being in the moment. What are,
Yeah,
what are you doing? I'm looking at the rocks in front of me, making sure I
yeah.
don't trip. Looking at the top of the peak where I'm hiking to. It's a beautiful thing to be in nature and just to enjoy it. So yeah,
When
yeah.
I take my daughter though, because she's a 13-year-old, she wants a little bit of excitement. So we have this hourly dance off where once an hour we'll put on a song and we just dance away wherever we are. And we must look crazy if other hikers can see us, because neither of us are good dancers, but we'll all go. And it is just a
That.
really nice, yeah, break up. Yeah, that's
Oh, I love that. A dance off. Who gets to
yeah.
choose the music, Lisa?
I let her choose the song and we
And
go.
you just like go for it.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that
exactly.
idea. I'm
Yeah.
going to try that one. I like
And it's very much dance like no one's watching, because no one is.
Yeah. Nature is watching. That's it. The
Yes.
birds, bees. That's it. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. It's been fabulous just to chat with you. And I've taken away so much, and I'm sure everyone else will. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ro. Lovely to catch up. Appreciate it.
If you are inspired but thinking, I can't do that, then you are so wrong. Anyone can learn the art of uncomfortable growth with the help of my flagship program, Uncomfortable Growth, Own Your Reinvention. In this, you will learn to navigate your own internal contradictions to finally unlock the courage and commitment to live a deeply meaningful life by design and on your terms. Uncomfortable growth is about the struggle and joy in discovering who you are, what you truly want, and how to make it happen. If this is something you are ready for, then find out more at www.rowenamillward.com. What have you got to lose? or more importantly, gain?